Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is your host, Brian Funk. If you're listening to this in the spring of 2020 as it's being released, hopefully you are staying home. You are slowing the spread of coronavirus and doing your part. It's really important that we do that. And to encourage you, I am giving away my live performance with Ableton Live video course for free if you use the coupon code STAYHOME and promise to stay home. You can find that at brianfunk.com. Just use the coupon code STAYHOME, and it's 2.5 hours of videos, and I think there are 31 videos about live performance. This is the course I wish I had when I started trying to make my own live performance set, and I hope it helps you, and I hope it gives you something to work on and do as you pass the time at home, and maybe once this is all over, we can all get together and celebrate with some new live music. Today, I have on the show Lido. And Lido is a musician based out of LA, from Norway, Norwegian. He has really got a pretty impressive resume going already for such a young guy. Working with some great artists, producing songs with Chance the Rapper. And I mean, as I'm reading your bio, man, like it's just like a name after name that comes up. It's pretty cool. We got like Ariana Grande, Mariah Carey, AP Ferg. I mean, it's awesome. And you're coming out with a new album soon with it's titled, I'm going to mess it up, Peder, or if you want to give me that pronunciation.
I say Peter. Whenever I talk about the album, we just say Peter.
You say Peter? Okay.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you taking the time to hop on the show and talk about making music.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Good energy already, I can feel. So that's always a nice thing. I think that translates to the art.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That's one of the main ingredients. If the energy isn't right, then like the people on the other end of it is going to feel it. So it's important.
Yeah, I think of music a lot as like an energy exchange. It's like a transformation. Even if you're just listening to music, it changes your head, changes your mindset.
100%. Like music is really like the most, in terms of like, and I'm obviously biased because I'm like a music fan first and foremost, but music to me seems to be the art form that I can think of that is the most immediate and efficient in terms of having an influence on your feelings. Like a song will change your mood instantly when you don't even need like a full second before a song will do something to you. And it is definitely one of the most powerful mediums in terms of healing and in terms of like setting up a situation, in terms of influencing people's days and lives and ways of thinking. So I'm just very happy to be able to be doing this every single day, because even if I'm having a shitty day, I could just work on a cool song and it'll change the way I feel about my day immediately. So yeah, it's definitely like communication first and foremost, you know what I mean? It's like transfer of energy, but it also has like an amazing influence on the energy and whatever situation you play the music at. So like yeah, music is magical, a magical phenomenon, and one of the very like few things that I like still consider like, oh yeah, that part is magic, because I can't explain it. It's just magic.
I hear you. And like with other forms of art too, like, I mean, you can close your eyes and not look at the painting. You don't have to, you can't close your ears. And music is a weird thing because you can pay close attention to it and let it affect you. Or if you're not even listening, it has this like subliminal subconscious thing that it can do to you.
Absolutely. Like regardless of if you're listening actively or passively, I do think that that music definitely has like an effect on like the movie that is your life. It is such a powerful soundtrack. And yeah, just most things really do become better with music regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So like I listen to music pretty much constantly. And I can't really imagine like my life very much without having that as a tool in terms of making connections with people, and in terms of, just just bettering my day and my moment, you know.
Mm. So you have a pretty like technical training though, don't you?
Well,
From an early age anyway?
from an early age for sure. I definitely grew up in a quite musical house. My dad is very strange upbringing. I was raised in like a little like fishing village in Norway. So you can imagine like the musical influences that was around. And but um were my dad was like really into gospel music. And he sort of was like the guy importing American gospel music to Norway and kind of putting people onto it. Um, so it was a very like interesting contrast to where like I was living in cold, rainy Norway, very isolated in the forest, but then the only thing playing in the house would be like contemporary gospel music. So so I think that definitely gave me like somewhat of an education, like in terms of in like I got to hear like the most amazing musicians in the world, really, because I do like at the end of the day I really believe that church musicians are the best ones. Like they just have something extra in terms of communication and um in terms of being able to not only communicate with the audience but communicate with each other, and it creates this really cool synergetic effect within the music where everybody is having fun and everybody is kind of um, expressing themselves constantly. Like there's no point because there are no solos in gospel music. You don't play a solo ever. So you're always playing a solo, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always making the most of every single section, and you're always communicating and doing cool stuff and feeding off of each other. And that sort of energy, I think, was the thing that really attracted me to music in the first place. Because you could feel it. Like the bass player would do something really cool, and it'll inspire the drummer to answer it with something else. And you have this constant, like building feeling. So so I would definitely consider like the music that I was played as a kid a very big part of my education, but I don't have any like classical training. Um, I I went to like a very like arts focused high school, um, and that's kind of like the only like that's the only like music classes I ever took. Only like real like formal training, I guess. And other than that, like it was mostly just my parents allowing me to not go outside and they bought me a drum kit when I was like about 2 years old.
Wow.
um and yeah, definitely a bit of a gamble, like from the parents side. I'm sure it
Oh
was
God.
noisy as fuck growing up, but
That's a
yeah,
pretty cool
definitely,
thing when a parent will allow a kid to make
right,
that much noise.
dude. I was blessed to be able to do that. Um, but they saw it, like at that point I'd already like ruined all their chairs and all of their like pots and pans in the kitchen and stuff. So I think it was just as much a financial investment
Yeah.
as like an investment in their child's education. Um, but I think I honestly, like as much as like the noise I'm sure is a lot, I advise like all parents to like start their kids off with drums, um, because the sooner you get that rhythm into your body, like into your bones, um, everything else comes a lot easier. I think
Hmm.
if you're supposed to, like a lot of people will start with the more complicated instruments. They'll start with piano, they'll start with violin, things like that. And it's very tricky to like learn the math of music and the scales and the rules and and the techniques and stuff before you even have like the music enjoyment part like built in. And that's what I feel drums do. You know what I mean? Like they kind of playing drums allowed me to be a part of the music, but at the same time enjoy listening to it.
Hmm.
and not obsess about the fact that I just played like a key, that I was just out of tune, or that I played the wrong chord or whatever. So it gives you like the fun part of music first. And then once you've caught that inspiration, it was a lot easier for me to pick up other instruments. So, and the only like real other instruments that I do master, I consider being keys. And I can fake my way on whatever other instruments, but like keys is like where I'm actually comfortable. But as a kid, I would play the keys like a drummer. I would just be like,
Yeah.
oh, I just hold my hands like this, and it'll make a nice chord, and then it's just drums from there.
Yeah.
So having that in your bones, I think like is like a great foundation for any kid if you can stand the noise.
Yeah, but it is kind of like the first inclination, like people want to bang on things and tap their
Right.
foot or like, I mean, you see kids, they just want to hit things.
Absolutely. If it makes a sound that's cool, like that's inspiring and it's fun. And I think like introducing people to like the more like tedious part of music, which
Mm,
is, learning scales and learning like sheet music and stuff like that. I feel like that can very quickly kill your inspiration.
mm.
And so I'm very happy. My parents realized very early that they can't pretty much push me to do anything I don't want to do. So they were just like, "You want to play drums? Sick. We're gonna let you play drums for 8 hours a day if that's what you want to do." And that's what I did until I was like 10, 11 maybe. And at that point, I started getting bored with playing drums, and the natural next step for me was to start playing keys. And around the same time, I figured out that you could make beats on computers too. So like those two things kind of went hand in hand.
Nice. It's a good babysitter, a drum kit.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing babysitter. You just need a basement.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And I was there. They didn't have to worry. They could leave the house and like fucking go to a movie, come back. I'm still playing drums.
Hmm.
I was there.
I was lucky enough when I was playing in bands as a teenager that we had a basement at my house and my parents would allow us to practice there. So,
Yep.
I still like look back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe they allowed that.
Oh, 100%.
And having
100%.
all the instruments left over, like during the week when we weren't playing, there would be a drum kit in the basement. I'd just be like, all right, cool. Go down there. And my parents knew obviously where I was, what I was up to.
Right. Exactly. Like you hear the noise, so you're
Yeah,
good. You know what's going on. When it gets quiet, that's when you need to worry.
right. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because you mentioned like the magical part of music. And I think music is really funny like that in that there is a very technical side to it. It's mathematical, it's frequencies, and there's a lot of science that you can get
Mhm.
into, but there's also that other part that's just, you know, you can't really explain it with intervals and numbers and frequencies the way it comes at
Right.
you.
Right.
And I wonder, so maybe this is like a cop out of learning theory sometimes, but it's a part of music I don't ever want to lose. It's just that magic. It is
Mhm.
great to learn things, and I've studied a little bit, but I do appreciate the magic. And sometimes when I get too technical and I hear music and I say, well, "There's the 1 4 5 progression again,"
Yeah.
it can suck a little of the life out of it, but the magic is something really worth hanging on to and remembering.
No, I totally agree with that. And I do think I think it kind of goes with what we talked about in terms of like like kids like diving into the math too early will kind of take away the
Mm,
magic. Um and so I'm definitely, there's two sides of it. One thing is keeping the magic, and another thing is exploring, you know what I mean?
mm,
Like because the thing for me is, and I don't have much like theoretical knowledge in terms of music, but like a decent amount. And I think the thing, I don't think the theoretical part of music should be used necessarily to teach you about music, or to like spark your interest in music, but it is an incredible tool in terms of gaining confidence in what you're doing.
Hmm.
Because I work with so many different types of musicians, so many different types of artists, and the advantage that the ones that have training have, like theoretical knowledge, the advantage that they have over the rest of the artists is that they the happy accidents that you have, like the magical moments that you kind of have in the studio where just like, oh, something just happened and it became incredible. They're able to understand what they did. And with
Right.
that knowledge, they can do it again.
Hmm.
But for a lot of artists that are more like raw talent, like no education, they kind of have to like just like fumble around until it happens, and then won't I think it's tricky for your confidence when you're then asked to do it again.
Hmm.
And you're put in a situation where like you need to perform right now. You have 6 hours in the studio, do the thing that you did on that other song. And when you're put in those situations, if you have a little bit of knowledge about what you did, then you can kind of figure your way back, instead of have to like searching in the dark for so long. So I don't think like theoretical knowledge of music necessarily contributes a whole lot to what you're doing, but it allows you to understand when you did something good and how to do it again.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So like a little bit of training, I don't think it'll take away the magic. And a little bit of education will. I feel like it helps more than it does damage up until a certain point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you still got to get in that vibe and that feeling.
1,000,000%. And those things have to do with other things, though. They have to do with the vibe in the studio. It has to do with the people that you're surrounded by. It very much has to do with the music that you're listening to. Like the input, that you're getting, and like studying. Like I call like listening to music studying. That's a part of work
Yeah.
for me. You know what I mean? Like being mindful of my input. Um, but yeah, but like sure, like it'll be cool if I learn a new chord or a new progression or whatever, and maybe I'll use it. But it's more so cool to like have the confidence to know that like if someone needs me to perform right now, I can do it because I know what I did last time that they liked.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it too. I mean, like a writer needs to read, and a TV producer needs to watch TV shows, and you got to
Take a
get
part
your
of your
input. Yeah.
Yeah. 1,000,000%. And your input has so much to do with your output. This is a very like basic, natural law, I think.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? And most things in life is like whatever you put in is what you get out.
exactly.
And if you're mindful of the type of music that you're eating, or whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
then what comes out is going to be influenced by it.
Hmm.
So even I like, even with like passive listening, I try to like make sure that I'm listening to stuff that I think will be, um, good for me.
Hmm.
I guess, um, like stuff that's like I try to purposefully passively listen to music that would be tougher for me to listen to actively. Like music that I'm like, I know this music is important. I know this music is incredible. It's great. Um, but I don't know if I could sit like and like actively listen to a whole album of it. Then I just keep it on the background because I know that it reaches my brain, and so
Right.
it's still gonna influence me.
So would that be
Um,
maybe like more like classic stuff that maybe classical even or whatever genre,
yeah,
but just to know that like this is high quality of whatever kind of music. Let it just
absolutely.
kind of soak in.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
I do that all the time. Even like listening to music that people like. albums and artists that are like really important and that like I know have had like a major influence on the type of music that I do listen to actively. Um, and I just want to have the foundation somewhere in my subconscious.
Hmm.
Um, and it really matters. Like I've noticed like it does whatever I have on in the background, it really influences what I do like when I make music. Um, like I've been listening to a ton of like Coltrane like lately, just like passively. And I can feel myself thinking differently just based off of that, even though I haven't sat down and like actively listened to it like
Hmm.
that much.
Well, that's
It's
cool
cool.
stuff too, because you could totally study that, and people do, and there are courses on it. But it's also
Absolutely.
very vibey.
It is.
It sets a mood, and that's a nice part of it
Absolutely.
too.
It's good music to do your dishes to. It's you know what I mean? Like, it's good music to like take a walk to or fucking like do whatever.
Hmm.
Um and a lot of great music is like that. You know what I mean? Like a lot of really incredible albums are nice albums to just like have on.
Right.
Because a great album is also supposed to be a great playlist. You know what I mean? Like it's supposed to be a vibe. And it's cool if there's variation or whatever. But a lot of like the like classic artists and classic albums have a vibe that you can kind of like put on and like soak into for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's nice. I tried doing a thing where like I listen to one classic album every day. Um, and I fell off it, but it's cool because it feels good and it really does affect the music that you make.
Hmm. That's a
At least for
good
me.
goal to set, even if you don't get it every day. You're still getting like a steady diet of some stuff that has been like, time tested and worthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Diet is a low key, a really like good way of putting it. Like, what's your musical diet?
Hmm.
That's cool. I'm gonna use that. That's tight.
There's junk food, there's McDonald's.
You know what I mean? It tastes
Yeah.
good in the short term, but
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it good for you in the long term?
Right.
Yeah. That's input equals output. That's
Hmm.
real.
So you are a kid that got bored on the drums. You're banging on the piano now. Um, and you did mention you got into making beats on the computer at, I guess, at a pretty young age, huh?
Probably about the same time I found the piano.
Hmm.
Like 11, 12 is like when I started like producing, I guess. But obviously at the time I didn't know what I was doing.
Hmm.
I had the ability to make music on the computer, and that's all I knew. I didn't realize that I was necessarily even, like writing songs. I think I was just playing.
Yeah.
Because I came at it from like the standpoint of a musician, and not like someone who was trying to be an artist or someone who would like had like an idea. Like I didn't start making beats because I wanted to be like a famous producer, or because I wanted to be an artist, or like I needed something to sing my songs on top of or whatever. I was kind of just messing around.
Hmm.
Um, and it was like that for a while. Um, until obviously I was like, oh wait, like I can do something with these things that I'm making. But it's funny, my uncle like still has like a lot of the stuff that I was making when I was like 11, 12, 13. And it's definitely more avant-garde than anything else that I've made.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that shit
Yeah.
was all over the place. I didn't know any of the rules. I didn't know any, like I had no purpose, no agenda, no platform that I was trying to reach, nothing. So like it was such like limitless and like
Yeah.
really like interesting and weird music. Like that's like I very often have like trouble putting like a genre on my music, but the shit that I was making back then was truly genreless, like impossible to tell what the fuck it is. And yeah, I like that a lot.
It's a really cool and brief time period in your life when you're that
Yeah,
age, you're kind of like it's before you're starting to like change into an adult, and you're not really like into girls yet,
Yep.
and you have this like really active creative imagination. And
Yep.
it's always interesting for me where people are in that, like, I'd say like 9 to 13 age group,
Yep.
because it often like has a lot of truth in their whole like big picture of their life. They seem to like,
Absolutely.
we seem to find that passion a lot of times at that age, there's no point to do it. You're not thinking about impressing anybody, trying to get dates or get
Yep.
famous or get rich. You don't care about money, and it's just for the love of it and for the
Mhm.
fun of it.
No, a million percent. There's something very like pure and
Yeah.
naive, um, and you don't really, yeah, it's like you say, you don't really have any intentions
Hmm.
with your stuff yet. You know what I mean? You're just doing it because you want to do it, whatever that is. And yeah, I think that's definitely like an important like age to pay attention to, like what did I like doing, like what did I want to do, because I think there's definitely a lot of context clues there in terms of like low key what you still probably actually really want to do.
Yeah.
um and then we get lost in the intentions, and we get lost in all the other stuff.
Yeah. Right.
uh yeah.
Hmm. So how do you get into working with other people, actually taking this a little more seriously?
Well, I my stuff starts to get interesting around here. So when I'm like 13, 14, I started like writing actual songs, and like was like, oh, maybe I should be an artist. And I was a part of a couple. I was pretty good at music as a kid too. So like I got picked up by a few different like TV shows and started like getting a little bit of exposure
Hmm.
like at home, in terms of just being like the really young drummer kid, or like
Hmm.
the really young dude who like is singing and making like really different types of music. Um, and I think a lot of people were really like really surprised with the stuff that I was making because of my influences. I was, not into like any of the stuff that my friends were listening to. They were listening to like emo rock, and they were listening to like the indie music, and like or just straight up like radio pop music. And I was like, man, I really like gospel music, and I really like R&B music. um, and it was so clear in the music I was writing that those were my influences. But I think there were very few others in what I was doing that was influenced by the same things. So people started to notice, and I started I started like putting out music, and had like a bit of a like pop career in Norway. Had a bunch of songs on the radio, and a major label deal, and a couple albums, and like the whole thing. And it just got to a point where I was like tired of it, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just like start making some other weird stuff. I got bored again, and I started messing around with more like electronic inspired music. Probably like 18, 19 maybe. Um, I started messing with that, and just started putting it on SoundCloud,
Hmm.
and it connected for some reason. And not with the people in Norway very much, at all. They wanted me to keep doing what I was doing, but I found a community of people over here. I live in LA now, so like there's like I found a community of people here, and that was like really interested in what I was doing, way more than people at home. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm gonna go see what that's about. And then I started traveling over here, meeting people, like-minded people, and making music with them. And then slowly, more and more people would just hit me up, and all my like main collaborators came about. in this time period, in a very, very like organic way, to where they were just like, you for some reason, the stuff you make sounds mad different and weird, and we're curious about it. So let's see what happens if we make music together. And after like a year's time of that or something, um, I was like, you know what, there's way more stuff for me to do in the US than there is in Norway right now, because people aren't really trying to make that type of music where I'm from. So I moved here. And now Norway is super up on that type of music, and there's a lot of incredible people doing it. But at the time, I felt very alone. Um, and and people over here liked it, and that gave me the excuse to make the move.
I'm pretty interested in that. If you're a teenager, you know, you said signed to a major label, you're doing like pop records, you're getting a lot of validation as a teenager. It's such a fragile time where you
Mm.
crave that, you know, you want to be accepted and you don't really even know who you are so well
Right.
yet. And you said you got bored. I'm not sure the question I want to ask, but it's something like what happened? How come you didn't get sucked into that? Just even if it was just like the validation of being like a young kid, like, oh my God, like I'm accepted and people like me. What happened that, and how did you decide to? It must have been a difficult decision too to like kind of step away from that.
No, it definitely was, and a lot of people were like, kind of like, "What are you doing? Like, why
Yeah.
you're trying to make underground electronic music on SoundCloud and like not make radio money in Norway? Like, what are you
Hmm.
doing?" A lot of people were definitely confused about it. But again, I think it has to do with like my foundation in music.
Hmm.
Um, it had to do with the fact that like when I would go to shows with my dad, or like when he would, because my dad like literally was like the import guy. Like he started a festival around gospel music,
Oh, cool.
when I was very, very young, and he would book American gospel artists to come and play, and also usually have like workshops with people, and they would like each year they would like build like a little choir out of people from Norway, and had like American musicians come play with them and teach them and whatever. And I think a lot I think a lot of the reason why I was trying to push further was because like that's the validation that I was craving. um, I was like, well, sure, song is on the radio and that's great, but I know it's not going to impress any of the musicians that like my dad hangs with.
Hmm.
I know like like my music don't have the chops. I can't put those types of chords in my songs that I want to. I can't really like push boundaries, and I was just surrounded by so many incredible musicians whom I really looked up to, and I just wanted to make something that would like make them go, wow, like
Hmm.
what was that? Um, and I think just like for myself too, obviously, like I wanted to keep pushing myself, and and like I've always been more inspired by things that surprised me, or things that kind of like opened up new worlds within music for me. And I always wanted to explore. I always thought it was fun exploring, combining things that people weren't doing yet. That was very much kind of like, I think, why people in electronic music noticed me early on too, is because I was blending influences from like fusion jazz and from gospel music and from like soul records. I would be sampling old soul records and stuff, and like kind of like putting like a club music spin on it. And and people were like, oh, this is different, this is interesting. And I just think that validation was more important to me than the kind of like the like the fame aspect of it.
Yeah.
I definitely had like a moment like that in Norway. Was I was playing to thousands of people when stuff was on the radio and whatever. And you know, when you get to that point, people start getting invested and people start telling you what you should be doing. And I have a I don't have my English vocabulary is pretty limited. So I don't know what it's called, but what's the thing when like someone tells you what to do and you just want to do the opposite?
Yeah.
There's a phrase for it. I don't know what that is, um
Gotcha though.
but
Yeah.
definitely have that, whatever that is. So if people are like, "Oh, you should really be making more stuff like that one song that like did really well on the radio," I'm like, "Cool, I'm gonna do the exact opposite of that." That's just built into me. So I think there was a mixture of that. I felt like I wanted to impress people that were like super super good musicians. And I didn't want to do what I didn't want to make music the just because someone else told me to make it,
Yeah.
or that I should be making it. I've always been more explorative with the music that I've been making.
Well, that makes sense. And just in talking to you, you genuinely love music and you're interested in it. And to kind
Mm-hmm.
of produce the predictable and maybe sometimes empty pop music that
Right.
will, you know, it's, I don't want to take away from pop music because the pop music is also can be really amazing, but it's
Absolutely.
sometimes it's just I'm digging myself
I
in
mean,
a little funny place here,
there's
but you know,
there's a different, like pop music generally is like motivated by something else. Like I think
right.
pop music is motivated by how can I create something that communicates with as many different types of people as possible.
Hmm.
And usually that is like, or usually I think a lot of people approach that as like, all right, let's be manipulative. You know what I mean? Let's use certain things that I know like off bat is going to connect to a lot of
Yeah,
people
safer,
instead of
I think is where I was going
exactly
with that. Yeah.
like kind of like there's certain tricks that you're like, I know if I do this, a lot of people will think that it will appeal to a lot of people.
Hmm.
um and I didn't care about appealing to a lot of people. I had certain people that I wanted to appeal to.
Hmm.
um and pop music is incredible, and it's taught me so much about communicating, because now that's sort of like, if you combine those two things, like the pushing pushing yourself and pushing like boundaries and people's idea of what music is, but at the same time having like an awareness of what communicates, and how to sort of like present things to people. Like say for me, like the moment I really discovered hip hop music was College Dropout.
Hmm.
And when College Dropout happened, like I was aware of it. I heard a lot of hip hop music, but I didn't get it. And then when that album came, that was like my gateway drug to hip hop,
Yeah.
because it had so many gospel influences. It has so many like soul influences and samples and things that I was familiar with and that I loved. And it was like, here's something that you're familiar with, and here's something new that you might now have like a entry into, you know what I mean? Um
And that's
and
funny, just to like counteract what I just said. One of the things I loved about that record was it was kind of poppy. It did have
uh-huh.
these like really obvious, like clear hooks and catchy
Yep.
parts, and it
Yeah.
really pulls you in. So
Yep.
it's a really nice use of some of those techniques to do something different and new.
Absolutely. And it felt like the mission was different. It felt like, it didn't feel like I was like lured into something, or that it didn't feel like I was being manipulated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
It felt like someone was like, it felt like someone's like spoon feeding me like this, I'm about to open up a new world for you. Like
Right.
Here you go. And I love that album. It's an incredible album.
Yeah.
And it really does balance on like flipping things that are familiar, and communicating like new ideas. It was super refreshing and like really, really important to me at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could see how that would definitely hit on a few of your personal like preferences and interests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It blew my mind. Totally blew my mind. I was like, oh, I can play this album in the car and my dad is gonna like also like it. Like I can listen to rap music and my dad will be down. Like this is cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that was a huge one for me. Definitely.
Yeah. It sounds like you and your dad really have a pretty good connection, and he inspires you a lot in your own direction.
Definitely. My dad like has, I think, set a lot of like really incredible examples for me in terms of doing things out of passion, and kind of like cranking away and like and working hard at something that means something to you that's not necessarily like the the commercial thing to do or whatever. Like he was trying to bring gospel music to Norway. Like that's like not something you're gonna get rich off of, but he put a lot of time into it and it was really important to him. And it, it those scenarios, like when he's in front of a choir or when he's like with a band, those moments like are by far the happiest moments that I've like witnessed him in. And it was just like so inspiring to see like he really does this out of love and not because it's smart to do. And yeah, that's how he is generally with everything that he does. He does it out of passion because he feels like it should be done, not necessarily because it's like the intelligent, like clever business thing to do or whatever. So yeah, definitely a very, very, very important part of my life for sure.
Yeah, that's like playing the long game, looking for the big picture. And I could see like especially why that would lead you into kind of getting out of a spot where you were having success but it wasn't fulfilling you as you kind of wanted it to.
Absolutely. My parents, both my dad and my mom, were really the ones that pushed me too, because I definitely got comfortable for a second. I definitely was like, oh, this is fine, I can just do this here and it'll be fine. And they were like, you should try to go bigger. Like you should like, what are you doing here? Like all of your influences, all of the people that like really, really connect with what you're doing and who get it and who could push you further are in the US. Like you should be over there. That's the type of music that you're making. And it was an incredible feeling coming over here and kind of realizing that like people get my references. Like to kind of be like, oh, like when I flip something or when I like reference something in my music, people get it and they've heard it before and they understand it. And like that validation was like really, really like satisfying to me. So, but yeah, if it weren't for them pushing me, I don't know if I would have made this move because it was definitely scary at the time when I did it.
And did you come alone too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did. I found somebody who was down to manage me.
How old are you at that point?
I was just about to turn 21.
Yeah, that's like a lot,
Yeah,
It's a leap of faith there.
definitely. Like completely different culture, complete like different like social like everything was different. And I didn't realize how different it was until I came over here for sure. But there's like some major cultural differences that I nobody could have taught me. You know what I mean? So it was scary. and the system is just mad different. You know, Norway is a very safe and very like, you know, like like semi-socialist, like very like very chill place to grow up. And coming over here, it was just like, oh, this is a whole different beast. Like this is the real world type shit. Like that was the feeling. Um, but yeah, I think the validation of people connecting with my music was more important than all the other stuff.
Yeah, you build a community off of that too.
Mhm.
So you got some cool stuff coming up now. Your track "How to Do Nothing" is really cool. That was
Thank you.
the thing that kind of pulled me in personally. And I hear the gospel influence quite a lot, especially in the vocals and some of the chord structures. One
Mhm.
thing I really liked about it was the sound design too. We haven't really
Thank you.
talked about that too much, but you have a lot of like really. It's a pretty sparse mix too.
Mhm.
There's a lot of space, and I think that takes a lot of restraint because we could just keep adding tracks. Like
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to ask you about that kind of idea a little bit. When do you know where to stop that? How do you decide? I don't know if the word minimalist is right necessarily for it, but it has a lot of aspects of that, and the restraint. It kind of fits in with the idea of the song too. I'm gonna ask you about that.
Very true. Good point. I think it's probably a mixture of things. It's I sort of like when I first moved to the US, my music was like definitely the opposite of minimalist. It was um, a lot of crazy sounds on top of each other, a lot of different sections and transitions, and I just wanted to do everything, and I wanted to fit every single crazy thing that I could into every song.
Yeah.
Um, and it was great practice, you know what I mean? And a lot of people liked it. And I think it's kind of just the pendulum swinging, honestly. It was like now I'm in a place where I'm more curious about the quality of elements, being able to carry something on its own
Hmm.
rather than kind of like hiding your flaws in like an overwhelming like sound design craziness.
Hmm.
So and I think it's like the people that I've been around the past couple years too, that have a much more like minimalistic like view of music, and they're more curious about how elements will make you feel rather than how crazy the elements are.
Hmm.
And with How to Do Nothing specifically, the inspiration was I wanted to make a track. Well, basically, if you don't mind, this like is a good moment to explain a little bit about the album,
Yeah.
because How to Do Nothing is a part of an album that I made called Peter, and um, the album is, I won't go like super into detail, but every project that I make, I always like make a little story next to it, that I can follow, not necessarily to like make concept albums, but so that I have like a set of guidelines in
Yeah.
terms of the decision making, and it really helps. So with this one, I made up a story about a boy who was born on a spaceship, where there is no music. He lives alone on a spaceship, and his only friends are the machines on that spaceship. And he one day gets caught in a storm, and tunes in. He sends out a mayday signal. Instead of getting a signal back, he accidentally turns into like a pirate radio station that's playing like underground music, and he discovers like the magic of music through this one singular channel, and falls in love, and he's like, I really want to make music, and he then attempts making an album, on this spaceship with only the help of these machines around him. He doesn't have anybody to teach him the rules about music or teach him the theory of music, how to make it even really. He doesn't have any instruments. But he's like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna use these machines to make it. So with that, it gave me like a set of guidelines. I wanted to make an album that was extremely pure and naive, kind of back to like that 9 to 11 like period that we talked about, where it's like there's no intention and you're not purposefully trying to break rules. You just don't know that they exist.
Yeah.
And that's like two very different things, like ignoring the rules and trying to like break boundaries kind of result in a very different type of vibe, at least in my head. So that's like the foundation of this album. I wanted it to feel pure and naive, but limitless and explorative. And that's how kind of like I made up this story about this boy. So How to Do Nothing is one of those things. How to Do Nothing, I imagined being a song, him hearing like a acoustic guitar ballad on the radio and not having an acoustic guitar and trying to create like that arpeggiated acoustic guitar feeling, but with synths. So that was kind of like the experiment. Like, how can I make something that is completely electronic, but have like a certain minimalistic acoustic feeling to it? Because that's the best that boy could do on that spaceship, essentially. Yeah, so like with certain guidelines, with a little bit of a blueprint, I think keeping things minimal and keeping things kind of on track like is a lot easier. Because if it was just a song with like no blueprint, then I probably would have done just that. I would have kept adding drums to it and adding parts to it and like whatever. And this was kind of just like, there's no real like hook to the song. It's kind of just like section after section and treating things more as like motifs rather than kind of like structure, because this kid would not be able to understand structure. He would understand like things repeating and things kind of like there being a core to the song, but he wouldn't know that a verse is supposed to be 16 bars and the hook should be 8 bars. And like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
He wouldn't know those things. So those were the things that I was trying to like break away from. And yeah, this is one of those songs. Yeah.
Yeah, because it is catchy. Like, it's memorable. There's melodies you hear and they come back. But I'm gonna have to listen to it again now with that idea behind it. You know, it takes it to another level. It's funny. It's funny you say that. I have like some notes just on my desk here, and sometimes there's like songs or there ideas for the podcast even, and I have one right here that's pretty much what you just said about having this like story for, and it's not necessarily a concept thing, but like, all right, what is this album gonna be? What is this record gonna be? What is this song gonna be? And telling that story helps. And I wrote this down because I wanted to record an episode of the podcast about it, which I'll probably do soon. I just finished a little EP of songs that were meant for like going to sleep or meditation or like yoga or just by like kind of putting this story in my head where, okay, you're kind of like going into yourself and you're letting things go. It made so many decisions for me before I ever have to make them. So exactly. I don't have drums. I don't have even rhythm, really. I don't even really have melody. It's really more like a textural thing. It's very drony, you know? So because this is what you're trying to accomplish. And it just occurred to me, like, by doing that, it allows you to like leave stones unturned. You know, like a lot of times in music, like you said it earlier, and I've been in this place too, where I make a song and I want it to do everything. It's going to have like the huge part. It's going to have the quiet, mellow thing. And then it's going to go here and there, and it's going to be sad. It's going to be happy. And it winds up just being insane. It can be fun to do that, but a lot of my favorite songs have sort of like, maybe it's a story, or I think I used to think of it as like a gimmick. Um, like I think of like a song like "Yesterday" by the Beatles,
Mhm,
and it's the acoustic guitar, and then those strings come in, and it's just
mhm,
this like nice, pretty melody. It's sad, and
mhm.
there's three other Beatles that aren't even on that song, and it's a
Right.
Beatles song, but and I just think like if they would have then kicked in with the band and they would have done like mopped up, things, harmonies, it wouldn't be that song that it is. It's that one with the string section, and
Yep.
the idea of like having these songs like, oh, that's the one that does that thing.
Mhm.
This is the one that does that thing. Oh, you got to hear this one because of that.
Yep.
Or else they're all just this one big blob of everything happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that what you're talking about right now, I think has to do with like maturing in music too. I think
Mm,
when I was younger, I wanted to do absolutely everything in each song,
mhm.
and then I kind of realized that if I do everything in each song, then people aren't going to remember any of it.
Yeah.
Um, but if I have like a cool thing that happens at one point in that one, like How to Do Nothing, for example, it's just it's just synths and then a little bit of organs that come in towards the end, and then it builds up slightly emotionally, and then there's one kick drum, singular kick drum hit, oof, towards the very end, just one hit, and everybody who hears that song talks to me about that one moment. It's just one kick drum,
Mm,
but because there's only one, it is so efficient.
mm,
And that really opened my eyes in terms of like simplicity, and kind of like setting up your moments
mhm.
is can be way more powerful than kind of like throwing a million things at people all the time. So yeah, I totally feel you. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's like an impact now. It's not
Yeah.
just a dum 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 a kick drum, which is obviously awesome and useful for a million
100%.
reasons, but when you just take it out of that context, now it's like this, you know, powerful thing.
Yeah, a million percent. Definitely, definitely. I
Um,
think, and I
yeah, go
think
ahead.
kind of like what we're talking about right now too, like in terms of having a blueprint for your music, sort of helping you make decisions. That's something that I realized because the past 3-4 years, I've been doing a lot of production for other artists, and um, in the past like 2 years, I've gotten really into like executive production, to where kind of I'm responsible for the sonics of the entire album. I'm responsible for the quality of the album, feeling the flow and the artist's performance on it. And that taught me so much about how to make my own music, because when you executive produce someone, like you're supposed to just help. You're
Yeah.
supposed to help make the best like product possible, whatever that is. If it's a very hands-on process and like I go in and change all the drums on all the entire record, cool, I'll totally do that. Or if it's just me sitting in the room and like giving like subtle like guidelines to certain songs and like changing the tempos on certain songs and structure and stuff like that, cool, that's what I do. Recently I was with a group that I just started executive producing, where like I realized that their mental health and their like lives generally was what needed work and not their music.
Hmm.
So we spent most of our time talking, and most of our time like putting rules into place in terms of their diet and in terms of like their everyday lives. And immediately it had a huge effect on the music that they were making. So in my position, I was like, I'm so used to executive producing now. It's way easier for me if I make up a fake character
Mhm.
that I can executive produce. So that was that boy on that spaceship. It's what, and it helped me so much to like kind of just put myself in the shoes of that kid, and how can I help this kid make the best album possible,
Hmm.
instead of instead of just sitting there being like, all right, what's the craziest thing I can do? What's the best music that I can make? And rather be like, let me set up a set of guidelines and then help myself like make the best thing possible. And because I do that with a lot of people that I work with, where like we'll make up a story, even if it's just to help the track list, for example. Like if you have a little bit of an idea of the curve of the album, all of a sudden like the order of songs becomes easier. Or if or kind of being real with people and being like, you know, who is important to you, like what people, whose opinions matter, or like who do you really want to reach with this? And then kind of painting a picture of that person and being like, cool, all right, so that gives us a guideline in terms of like, we can't do this, we're not doing that, and we should focus on this. So like I think having a little bit of an intention and a little bit of a blueprint like just makes the process of making musical projects that much easier.
Yeah, I think that's so true, because I know for myself, the least productive times I have is when I don't have anything like that. And I just want to, see what happens. I'm going to add all this stuff. I'm just going to, there's no wall anywhere. There's no like, nothing to,
Right.
it's a nice feeling. It's fun and exciting to go down in those spirits. But once you catch that thing that you're trying to do, a lot of things just fall into place for you.
Mm-hmm. And generally, I think low key, that's just like how human beings work. I think we do way better with limitations than we do with total freedom. Like it's like even looking at like the apps that do like really, really well. It's not the full package, like crazy, do whatever you want type social medias. It's the ones where like you have 140 characters and that's your limit. Or like you can only post pictures, that's your limit. Or every video can only be 6 seconds long, that's your limit. And those are like the medias that like people like really do something interesting creatively with. But if you don't even have a canvas and you just have paint, like where is my frame? Like what is the thing that I'm supposed to do something with? I'm exactly the same way. If you told me right now you have 15 minutes, make a song, I'd be like, okay, sure. But if you were like, make me a song about a toothbrush, or like where you're using a toothbrush and a bottle and a harmonica, I'd be like, sick. 10 minutes, I got you a song. Don't even worry. So it's like when you have like a set of limitations, I think it's way easier to be creative. Because then you have a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea. Excuse me. I love the idea of like maybe even just limiting like the instrument choice. But the thing that I think I'm into, that I have like written on this future podcast on this little piece of paper, is to like actually write it out. Like write out the story. Like you have a great story, and it's a really interesting and captivating story of the guy on the spaceship, the kid on the spaceship, and he's lonely. Well, maybe he doesn't even know about being alone yet because he hasn't even been with anyone really. But
Exactly.
this idea that like this new thing comes to him, and he's like, "What is that?" And it's his attempt. Like that must be something you must have been able to run with that. Like I've imagined like ideas just kind of flow out of that, right?
Oh yeah, 1,000,000%. And like that, it gave me so many guidelines in terms of like, all right, what sounds do I choose? You know what I mean? So like generally I gravitated towards more like sci-fi, like electronic sounds, but not doing what you would usually do with them. Because I don't imagine that kid listening to that type of music. But then it was just the tools that he had. So let's use those and make the stuff that we wanted to make. And it's also like somewhat of a reference back to me as a kid, like kind of like growing up quite isolated and finding this like channel of American music
Hmm.
through the internet that was just like, oh my God, a whole new world. I've never heard anything like it. I've never like this is so inspiring.
Hmm.
And kind of like my very like naive initial take on it. Um and honestly, like I think that's one of the things that have been like a very like valuable part of my music is this kind of like naive approach to like why can't we combine those things,
Hmm.
why can't we do this, sure we can do that, like why not. um and yeah, the story about the kid on a spaceship definitely helped in so many different ways. Track list, like sound design, lyrics, structure, everything.
Hmm. Yeah, and it does mirror your own story nicely, which is, I guess, why it's called Peter, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
you know. So,
And it was also interesting, you know, because I feel like if I was like kind of back to like the music that I was making when I was like very young, it was there was literally no genre.
mhm,
um and I thought that was really interesting, trying to on this album I really tried to like treat all my musical influences equally.
hmm,
um, so it's not like this is an electronic album with a little bit of whatever sprinkled in, or like this is a pop album with kind of like a insert whatever other genres. Like I literally tried to make something that is reflective of everything that I love equally.
hmm.
um and and yeah, I'm super proud and very very excited to share this album.
Hmm. Yeah, that, and you know what? It makes it more exciting for me, even just to want to hear it. And
Yeah.
it's something that's come up a couple times, and some people I've spoken to on the podcast, especially people that are into like AI and like computer generated music. And the question always comes up, you know, are computers gonna take over music? Are we out of a job in 2025? You know, these
Cool.
questions come up, but a lot of what draws people into the music and makes them connect to it is this story, this human story. And
Mhm.
I think like, you know, just hearing your story, it's like, oh damn, I want to hear how that came out, you know. And then it makes me say,
Right.
I want to, you know, get some story of my own and make it up. And even like you see it in like fashion, like, you know, kids will like wear the clothing of their favorite artist, or, you know, like when I was growing up in the 90s, like we're wearing like flannel shirts and ripped jeans because we love Nirvana. You know,
Right.
you're not going to see like a kid or anyone like, what's the story of the computer, that computer, even if it's beautiful, you know, how am I going to like dress like the computer?
Right.
You know what I mean? How am
Exactly.
I going to do like,
Exactly.
how am I going to
Uh,
get that life inspiration out of that? And I
and that
think that's what we have to remember is like stay human, like keep those elements in our music. And it sounds like
that's
you
the
got
thing.
that.
I think that's the magical part about music that we talked about like in the beginning, is how
Mm,
this the yeah, it's math, but the human element of it is what creates the magic. If not, it's just math.
mm,
And I'm totally giving away the whole thing right now, but that's also kind of like the plot of of that of the story of this boy. Um, he he tries to make music and it doesn't feel right because all he has around him is machines, and he realizes that like by the end of it that he needs to leave his spaceship and go out and find human experiences, because he realizes that all the music that plays on the radio has lyrics, and
mm,
the lyrics are all about things that he doesn't have on the spaceship. The songs are about oceans and trains and heartbreak and friends and wins and losses and um like like longing, and you know, like all of these things that are directly connected to human connection. And if we don't have that part, I think your music will very quickly suffer from it. Um, and that's kind of like the lesson or whatever, I guess, is like I can sit in my room in Norway and just make a ton of music, but until somebody breaks my heart, the sad ones are not gonna feel real. The sad ones are just not gonna be magical until I like have been at an incredible party and had fun with people. Then like the energetic party songs is gonna miss something. Um, so yeah, it's literally that's literally kind of like the plot. It's like you need people, you need experiences um, to be able to create art. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to make stuff and just have it sit on our hard drive. Like I can make music for myself all I want, but the human part of it is extremely important. Um, and without it, I think um, your music is going to have a lot harder of a time connecting. You know.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking tale of the guy that realizes like, oh my God, there's more out there.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And art can do that to us. It can make us see like, oh, there is something else going on,
Absolutely.
and it's kind of a nice way to put the positive spin on the tough things in your life too, where you know like that's gonna become like the seasoning in your music. You know, it's like, all
Yep.
right, you know what, this sucks, but yes, I might be able to draw from this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's definitely been the case with me. I think um I think the things that I've gone through, the people that I've met, the places I've seen, conversations I've had, like all of those things are probably equally as important to my music as how much time I spent studying other producers or like studying chords or collecting drum sounds or whatever it is that
Yeah.
we do to get better. Like the other stuff might low key be equally as important.
I hear you. It's a good point. You got to get off that spaceship and move to LA.
Literally have to, bro. You
Yeah.
literally have to. Definitely,
That's
you got to
good.
do some scary things and take some risks,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you have things to write about. Yeah.
Nice. Hey man, listen, it was really nice talking to you. I
Thank you so
feel,
much. Very nice talking to
you know, I got that feeling of inspiration from you, which is like the priceless
Oh,
ingredient, you know,
oh,
that's the thing
that
you're
makes
always
me so
looking
happy.
for. And I think a lot of people listening to this will get a lot out of just some of these ideas. And
I
it's cool.
really
It's
hope.
cool to hear just, you know, some of the things you've gone through and you've had a little taste of like, you know, success, air quotes, that like a lot of people would be totally fine with. And you've still tried to push past that. And it's exciting to see, you know, and I think the music reflects that, and it's it's a lot of fun. We got to tell people to go check it out. Where do you like to send people for checking out your stuff? Is there like a hub you
Oh,
have?
that's a good question. I
I
mean,
mean, I know you're on like iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff.
yeah, I did. That's probably the best place. I think. I I like sharing like a little bit of my music and stuff on social media while I'm making it. So if you're curious about like the process of it, you'll get a lot more out of like my Instagram and stuff like that. Um, but but yeah, just there's there's like so many different places I have music because when I first started out doing this, a lot of the music that I was making was like bootleg remixes and things that I could have never cleared and done stuff like that. So those things you can only find on like SoundCloud, for example. But the music that I'm the most proud of, you'll find on Spotify. So um, yeah, the internet is wide open.
Yeah,
Google. Google is
Google.
where you find music.
Lido, Lido.
Hmm.
Yeah, we got a Lido Beach here on Long Island. named after you.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Yeah. The name was given to me from a boy in Kenya when I was like 13 years old. So it's a pretty random thing that it just kind of stuck with me. So yeah, but people always ask me like, oh, does it have to do with the ocean? Like, I know about a beach. Like, 'cause I think it means beach in Italian or something like that. I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know. Google.
Google.
Look that
Go
up.
to the beach, write a song about it.
That's cool.
Sweet.
All right, man. Well, we'll say goodbye to everybody, then we'll wrap up together afterwards. But
Awesome.
yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And definitely check out Lido's work on the major streaming services. And I'll put some links inside the show notes too, so that people can find your SoundCloud, your Instagram, all that stuff if they want to connect further.
Awesome.
But yeah, thanks so much for taking the time.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Have a good day.